Welcome back, everybody. This is technically episode number 3 of the Rare Table Podcast. The last one we did was at the end of the year. We had a year-end podcast just between Steve and myself. Talked about a bunch of Pokemon things. But today, we got a special podcast because we're joined by Rare Candy's very own Farr. So, round of applause, everybody. Round of applause.
Howdy.
You can't really hear the applause of everybody, but they're applauding.
I'm imagining it. Yeah.
Trust.
Yeah, that's okay. So how are you? How have things been going at Rare Candy? Have you been having fun? What's going on?
I'm good. Things at Rare Candy are very busy all the time, but always having fun. Just got back from our Collecticon in Dallas this last weekend. That was super cool. It's always fun to hang out with the guys at the booth, test some new stuff we've been working on. You may have seen an announcement about last weekend. Hang out with some other collectors in person. I don't have a bunch of friends who collect here in New York City, so it's always nice to go to the events and meet a bunch of cool people.
There's so many people in New York City. There's got to be people that collect.
Yeah, it's mostly a question of me not making a bunch of friends in the city yet. I've been too busy working at Rare Candy. I need to go out more.
Yeah,
that's the truth.
Well, that's good. You get out to these events every now and then. They host it. Maybe you might have some secret insiders that you can't share, but on when the future events will be, who knows for Rare Candy there, but.
TBD.
You gotta spill some beans today. You gotta spill some beans.
I mean, we're gonna keep going to Collecticon for sure. I know that. Honestly, I'm the wrong person to talk to about future events, but we'll be there for sure.
I'll be there too, by the way.
Oh, which one are you going to next?
If no one invites
he's gonna fly over from Belgium and come to these events.
Oh, please.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you were joking. That's so disappointing. All right.
Well, if Rare Candy hosts an actual event, I assume Steven would actually try to come to that event if Rare Candy does their own event at some point. Who knows when that'll happen? Years down the line.
That's verbal contract, Steven. You will try to come to an event if we ever throw one.
I will try. I will try. I will do everything in my power. You know.
Okay.
Trust me.
Okay, I'll hold you to it.
Yeah, for sure. No problem. So obviously you work at Rare Candy, but let's take you back before you got to Rare Candy. How did you get to Rare Candy? What kind of education did you do? How did you end up in the position?
Long and winding road. So I don't have formal design education. I'm a self-taught designer. I started working as a designer freelance when I was a teenager. I was like a little kid. I really loved art. I loved to draw, that kind of thing. Got into computers, started using design software. Did logo design as a teenager, and then started learning how to code and building MySpace, custom MySpace layouts, ancient, for bands that I was in. Yeah, old days. That was super fun. Then started building little blogs for small businesses, got a job in an agency, did some time at a fashion company, building out a design team for them, and then joined Rare Candy a couple of years ago.
Did you actually join the original team on launch, or when did you join exactly?
Okay, so it depends where you track the launch. If we're talking about the launch team that kicked off the Discord server and ran, I think it was the first drop that happened in 2021. That was before my time. I joined in March of 2022, so a few months after that.
Okay. So technically, we got there before you.
In some ways, you guys are more important than me. Yeah, so that's fair. Can we just use the rest of the time for you to tell me the fun things that happened before I joined? I would love to know.
Oh, you missed so much fun. It's just me and Noah at that point. Just nobody else in there.
Just running the company.
There weren't very many people in Discord back in 2021 to 2022 before it went public, right? Yeah. So I mean, there were a couple hundred people probably, and how Steven and I hopped on was just, I think, with a happy hour or some sort of event. They did one of these stage events, and I attended a stage event. I was like, oh, they do stuff in this Discord. Oh, they have this, they do these things called happy hours, and that's where it went downhill from there. I started opening up so many packs every week in celebrations. So yeah, that's what you missed, was me opening up Celebrations Charizard, trying to get Celebrations Charizards for a few months before you joined. So
did you ever get that Charizard? Did it ever happen?
I did. It took me 11 months, and I finally got a Charizard.
Nice. Well, congratulations.
That's one of the stories we'll be telling for years to come at Rare Candy.
Yeah, it was in a happy hour, and everybody was freaking out.
Nice. That's amazing.
And what's the connection with TCG or Pokemon, or do you even have a connection with TCGs?
It's stronger now than it used to be. I'm not somebody who's like super deep into the community before I joined the team. I was a huge fan of Pokemon cards when I was a very young kid. Built out a nice little collection, managed to find like Japanese cards living in like deep eastern Utah, and then brought them all to school one day, and they all got stolen, and it broke my little kid heart. And so I kind of shied away from Pokemon after that. But like it's so much fun. I really enjoyed it. Like I liked Pokemon and Digimon growing up. I watched Yu-Gi-Oh all the time, and so when I had a recruiter reach out to me with an opportunity at the company, and I saw what it was about, I was like, okay, this seems like a really fun thing to work on. And previously, I was selling women's leggings, so this was a little more like in line with the kind of stuff I enjoy. So
slightly different,
slightly different,
just a little different, just a little different, not quite the same.
You were still selling stuff
too.
I am still selling stuff. Yeah, no, there is still some relevance there. I feel like all of my jobs have wound up being some version of sales. I used to work retail when I was a teenager, and I remember being so excited when I got out of it and started working design professionally, and unavoidably found myself at companies where I was still basically just helping to sell stuff through a computer. It's part of the reason that Rare Candy is so great, is that it's for once not just about selling things. It's also about a hobby, right? Like there's actual stuff you can do. It's about a community, that kind of thing. That's a nice change.
Yeah, for sure. And so you started working in March, and how did you end up on the team? Like, did you apply? Did they reach out? Did they try to nick you off a different company? Did you know anybody at the company?
I think one of the early iOS engineers, we worked together briefly at the company I was at before, and then he had left, and I didn't have any idea that he'd joined Rare Candy. And then a recruiter from the company reached out to me and didn't say anything about that, and hired me away from the company I was previously at. So as far as I knew, I was just getting snatched out of nowhere, and I found out after the fact that I might have gotten a recommendation from somebody, which was cool. But yeah, talked to a recruiter, had a conversation with Chris. Chris is amazing. I was like, okay, this is a cool person to lead a company. Excited about this. Talked to Lee. Lee kind of pitched me on the whole vision. And like, it was exciting, and it was really cool to see somebody who was so deeply involved in this world try to start something new. Like, I'm that kind of person. I like to make things, I like to create things, I like to start things. And so seeing someone else do that was really inspiring to me. And then I chatted with the engineering team, kind of got like a sense of what the culture was of folks who were actually going to be building the things I was designing, and they were all amazing. And that's kind of the dream setup. A bunch of people you like working on something together. So it wasn't a very hard sell. After I talked to everybody, I was like, okay, I'm in. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Maybe a question that we should have started with: what's the actual position that you do? That might be good context.
That's good context. I think my official title is design lead. I run the design of our website, of our mobile app, of the tools that folks use to sell in our marketplace. And design means both like how it looks, but also how it works. I work with Chris and Lee and our technical leadership to decide like what features get built next, and like the order that we build them in, all those kind of things. I'm the person who sets up research calls with folks like yourself and other people in the community to get a sense of what people think about the stuff that's already out there that we've built or that other companies have built, what they wish existed, things like that, so we can build the right kind of things next. It's technically designed, like the end of it is, what does this thing look like? How does it work? But there's a lot of different things that go into it.
Yeah, and I know you guys have a lot of features you want to put into the app and everything like that, and coordinating all that has got to be difficult because there's so much you want to do, there's so much excitement around it, and you can only do so many things at once. So you got to really like prioritize what comes first. So obviously, like the app's just going to keep getting better, the website will just keep getting better from what it's at right now. But with more features, you just announced the most recent card scanning features, which I think is really cool. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot on your plate.
There's so much, and that's maybe like the tough thing about a startup generally. Like the places I've worked before, when you're a freelance designer, it's very easy. Like you have a client, they have something they want to do, you make it for them, you're done. Very simple. You work in an agency, it's usually pretty crazy. It's very busy. There's a lot of clients that can be kind of intense, but it's like short-term work, right? So like same kind of thing like with freelance. Here's a job, knock it out, you're finished. After that, I worked at a much larger company where there's time and there's like a million people. So when you want to do something, you can plan it out like 2 years in advance, and you know you're going to have a massive team to help you build it, which lets you move kind of quickly in that way. And then a startup it's very different. Like it's a very small group of people trying to build something really, really, really big, and it's hard to do with a very small group. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when you talk about prioritization, that is 90% of what we do is thinking and talking about what's the right thing to build when,
Yeah.
getting it out there, and then seeing how people respond to it. And if we're right, people like it, and if we're wrong, it's maybe not quite the reaction we were hoping for. And so, yeah, shift gears, work on something else.
You got to adapt, right? So it's
Exactly.
a lot of getting that feedback and figuring out what to do next to make it better.
Yeah, exactly that.
In your position that you actually do, like all the work you do, is that just you, or are you working with somebody, like one, maybe more people, or is it just you?
If we're talking about the actual design output, that is just me. I'm still the sole designer here. Goal definitely to have a team of designers working with me. My last team that I ran was about 8 people. It's definitely nice to have a group of folks that you can split things across. But it's just
Yeah.
me doing the actual design work. I will say though, it's not like I work in like a corner. Like the great thing about a small team and working with like really amazing, talented people is like everybody on the team is a peer. And even if everybody is not a designer, like when I'm working through a problem or working through research for something new, like there are so many people at the company I can go to and talk to get advice or to bounce ideas off, that kind of thing. So I wind up working with pretty much everybody, but when it comes time to put pixels on a screen, it's just me.
Yeah.
Wow, that's actually really impressive. Like it's still a small probably company and a small app or website. Don't want to discredit you, but it's probably relatively small, and just you. Wow, that's insane.
No, it's definitely manageable, but it's it's a lot for one person. It's a lot for one person. I will say working in an agency environment definitely prepared it for it. The fun thing about agencies is just unreal workloads, 24/7, and startups are intense. They're not as intense as an agency is. So, well prepared, thankfully.
Impressive, impressive. So, what was the state of Rare Candy before or when you arrived in March of 2022? Like, how far was everything coming along? Was there anything coming along at that point? Or was it just ideas? Talk to me.
Is it just chaos back
Yeah.
then?
Is it,
It was
just
not. It
you
was not
do
chaos.
this?
It was actually in pretty good shape for considering how early it was. The foundation of the team was coming together. So the server had been launched. They'd done like some very early product testing with like the drop that was run that fall, and it had gone well. They'd begun to hire on engineering talent, so we had the technical folks necessary to start building stuff. At that point, I think the company had done a little bit of work with an agency to start figuring out what the future would be. So this is like very early idea stage. Like nothing has actually been built yet, but a picture is coming together of what it's going to be initially. So when I got hired on, it was to take some of that ideation work, figure out what made sense, figure out what didn't make sense, take the pieces that did make sense, and start working with the engineers to start building them. So there was not nothing, but it was definitely still in the idea stage. Nothing had actually been built by the time that I joined.
What's the timeline again? Because I'm blanking a little bit. When did the website launch? When did the app launch?
So we started building in probably April, I think April, May, when we went from just like, let's come up with some ideas to like, we're actually going to start building something. Um, we launched the app, I think we launched for the beta in August, maybe early September of 2022. The website launched shortly before that. I think a website launched in August. Yeah, and then we kept going from there. So it was about like, was that like a 4-ish month, like let's go from ideas to actually having something that's good enough that we can put it out there into the world.
Yeah.
That was a fun time. That was a fun time. Like there's like a lot of potential, like the possibility of that moment where it's just like we're going to dream about all the things we can do. And then there's the period of like, okay, what can we actually do in the amount of time that we have available? Yeah. It's like a little bit of like a slap in the face to be like, okay, what's actually feasible? But it wound up really coming together. And when we initially were rolling through the plan, the app was the initial focus. Like the website was actually a later in the game thing where we decided we wanted it to be available to as many people as possible. And that meant if we weren't going to be able to get like an Android app out there, if it was just going to be iOS, website was going to be the next best way for us to get it to as many folks as we possibly could. So late in the game. But I mean, a huge shout out to Andrew. I don't know if folks have ever seen him, Andrew Bax, popping around on the server here, but unbelievably talented engineer who pulled that together in wildly quick amount of time. So we're able to launch both of them basically in parallel by the end of the summer, early fall.
Yeah, I was able to meet Andrew at Lee's pop-up shop, which was over 2 years ago, January 2022. And that was like the very early Rare Candy team, because they had like a few engineers there. Chris was there. That was before, like Rufus had joined, before Waldo had joined, I think at that point either too, and then obviously left. And then, those guys are cool. I remember at the time they were like, "You guys, what's the fun project we should work on?" And so we were like, "Oh, you can do something for the Discord, make a bot for the Discord," because they were just getting started. Like, what should we do? Really cool.
I've heard so many good things about that pop-up shop. I think I was talking to a recruiter while that was happening. And I've heard about it from folks literally every single month since. It sounded like it was amazing.
Yeah. It was just the next fun to get together with all the people. That's what it was. Yeah, this Lee's thing.
This is my decision. I can definitely decide and tell you when. I don't know. No idea.
When can I see the announcement on the app? Tell me.
When are we going to get Stieven over here? We're going to fly him over. Come on, Stieven.
Well, he's going to try. He's going to try to come over. We're not going to confirm until actually make it. Yeah, he's going to start flapping his arms. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm being made fun of on my own podcast. Wow.
I'm sorry. That is actually very rude of me. That's a lie. I apologize.
That's a lie. I was actually supposed to be there, but it was actually at the tail end of the pandemic, and that actually stopped me from getting there.
Yeah, that was super disappointing.
Yeah, that was such a disappointment. Don't want to talk.
It was like, oh, Stieven's supposed to come to this, like we're gonna meet, and then, so my flight is canceled, and then I was like, oh man, that sucks.
That's so depressing. I'm sorry, Stieven.
Yeah. And now you're making fun of it, just to make it worse.
I feel very bad right now. I had no idea. That's horrible.
Don't feel bad around this guy. This is what he does. It's okay.
Hashtag
Stieven wants this.
Yeah. I need this.
He thrives on it.
Okay, we're getting off track here. No, we're getting off track. But what was the very first thing you did when you actually got hired? So your first assignment or your first job, whatever.
I had two things that I needed to do. So when I first got hired, one of them was to orient within the community, because this was not a community that I was already a part of. So I needed to go out and talk to as many folks as I could and gather as much information as I could so that I could start to develop some instincts for like what we should do. So I think I wound up actually scheduling, I might have talked to both of you in like the first maybe month and a half, 2 months that I was here when I was setting up phone calls, chatting with people. I also put together like a big survey that we just blasted out to the Discord community, asking a bunch of questions, just trying to get a sense of like, what do people collect? What other things are they interested in outside of collecting? Are people like just very casual hobbyists? Like how many folks do we have who are more like investor minded kind of collectors, that kind of thing? With the goal of all of that helping us decide like what are we going to build next, right? Just getting as much information as we could. Around the same time, it was also me working through the like ideation, like mocks, what they called, like just ideas for what the app could be that the agency had done. And so I just kind of took that and started chopping it up, getting out the parts that felt really good, that felt like they clicked already with the things that folks in the team like felt and understood to be important, like Lee, Andrew, people with like a very deep background in this kind of stuff. And then as those conversations with people in the community kept rolling, we started seeing some more results come back from the survey. It was taking the feedback that came from those, using that to start making some more changes to the mocks until we eventually came up with the initial vision for the mobile app, which is what you wound up seeing in September of 2022.
Yeah.
And how aligned was the actual app launch with the vision that you had? Was it a lot different? Did you have to cut corners?
Loosely. Directionally accurate is what we would call it. It was in the same direction. It was in the same direction as what we were trying to do. We definitely had to de-scope, as we call it. So like take the big thing you want to build. As you start actually working through the process of building it, it's like, okay, based on the progress we're making, we think we can definitely do this. This will maybe be able to do. This turned out to be much harder than we thought for whatever reason. And so that's going to have to be something that we, tackle over a larger period of time. There's a good amount of that, but the actual features that we've wound up releasing are mostly in line with what the original vision was. The thing that winds up changing is just the timeline. Like as you get one piece together and you start seeing what it's actually going to take to launch it, Sometimes it's easier than expected, and so you get to bundle an extra thing in. A lot of the time, as you start taking the problem apart, you learn that there's a lot more there, and so you wind up having to solve the problems to get that first thing out, as opposed to trying to squeeze, the initial however many things that you had planned in were. And because we started with the auction experience, running live auctions is not a like easy thing to do. It's not simple. It's very complex. Like the production operationally of putting them on is very difficult to do. Like getting all the stuff together to auction off, making sure it's properly kept track of, making sure that if you're ever working with like external consigners, they're in the loop about everything. Very complicated work to do. The actual show itself, so like when we have our live stream at the end of the auction, there's a whole bunch that goes into making sure those are successful, from like staging all the stuff so that it can be on the camera, through what you do with things after they get auctioned off during it. And then that doesn't even touch like the technical part. So like when you have a system that you build to manage taking in all of these bids, making sure that there aren't any hiccups along the way, making sure that when people place their bids, they can know confidently that it's gone in. Like integrity of an auction is extremely, extremely important, especially if you're talking about very high value items. There's a lot to it. And live video also like surprisingly complex when you're trying to keep it in line with like very intense bidding activity. So it was a really good example of one of those things that from the initial day, it's like, this is the thing we want to do. This is important. Like we're seeing the way other companies are tackling it, and we see ways that we think we can make it better. But then when you actually get into the weeds of building the technology out, there's so much there to do it right. And because it's so sensitive, you don't want to do it wrong, right? You have to make sure you do it right. That's the whole point. People have to trust that the system is reliable. So that wound up soaking up a lot of that time. And I would say it's probably one of the biggest reasons that the initial launch was super dialed in on the auction component as opposed to like all the different things that we'd been dreaming about before that.
Yeah, auctions just take so much to run that like when you first come up with the idea, you don't like think, oh, this is going to be as complicated as what it is. I mean, even like you were saying, the video feed, right? Because I know when I was doing some of the box breaks, I've got 2 cameras that are set up, going streaming to John. He's like, producing this together, putting everything in behind the scenes, getting the music going on, getting all the timing, everything that's correct. And then at the same time, you don't want that to mess up while you're getting all these bids in, and like the bandwidth that's needed for all of it on the server, everything's just, it's a lot.
It's a lot. There's a surprising amount that goes into it. It's a good example of like, it's part of the reason that I wanted to join this company. Like I knew I was going to get the opportunity to meet people I was not going to meet otherwise, learn about a world that like I was kind of adjacent to, but not a part of, get to play with technology that I just was, I mean, again, I was selling women's leggings. I was not seeing any of this cool auction streaming tech when I was working there. So I knew it was going to be an opportunity to get exposed to a lot of interesting things. But once you actually get in it, I mean, there's a lot there, and you don't realize it until you're in the weeds trying to build it. Yeah.
Plus, you get to see some cool cards, like when you're actually at the in-person, like the Dallas Collecticon. You probably got to see some of the high-value things that they had or whatever in person. It's cool.
That's a really fun part of it. I spend most of my time seeing them through my laptop screen on an auction page on Rare Candy. But yeah, getting to actually see them in person is pretty sweet. Every now and then I'm at the Dallas office during one of the during the end of one of like the premier auctions, and that's so cool. It's so much fun.
Just a spin-off question. Do you have like certain goals for collection grails?
Like my personal collection?
Now that we're talking about...
So I'm an artist collector, and it's still early days, but I'm working my way through, I think it's Miki Tanaka or Takana. I might have that last name wrong. But one of the early artists for Pokemon has this very specific like flat kind of cartoony style. It very much stands out from a lot of the other art that you see. And I remember when I first started getting back into it, I think I was going through a binder with Alec Noah, and he was showing me some stuff, and one of these cards just popped out. I was like, oh, I love that one. And he's like, oh yeah, it's one of my favorites. It's like the art in particular is really cool. And he told me the artist's name. And so I've started slowly working through that. It's more of like a collect all of the art kind of situation. I wouldn't say I have specific cards so far that I'm looking for, but anytime I see PSA 10 by that artist, I snatch it up, and I've got 3 or 4 so far. I've got a Chansey, I've got a Slowpoke, I've got a Machamp. That might be it. Working toward it.
Yeah, nice. That's really cool.
I know from the past that the Rare Candy staff is not allowed to buy stuff off auctions, but is there anything in the back that isn't on the website yet that somebody is like, I need this, I want to buy this, or is that just off the charts?
not that I'm aware of. I think policy would say that is completely not okay. At this point,
that's the correct answer. That's the correct answer. The diplomatic
and it is the true answer. I think that would kind of ruin the whole point. No, I mean auctions are holy. Keeping them safe, keeping the integrity there. That's the whole point. The one thing we are allowed to do, we can buy from the marketplace. So if we see something cool in the shop, we can snatch stuff off of there. I think I got a graded, I want to say it's a poly whirl from 151 Japanese Slab, which I also love that artist. Nice. I snagged one of those, but yeah, auctions are off limits for many reasons. You can't have people bidding on items in an auction. No, it doesn't work.
No, you can't do that. And I think it was when I was talking to Alec when he worked there, and it was just like, oh, you guys have these really cool items come in, and it's just like, I want some of these things, but you can't get them, you know?
Yeah. No, it's a double-edged sword. You get to be so close to this cool stuff, but can't own it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's okay. You can just be involved with getting record
You can
sales
always DM me and I can buy it.
Under no circumstances.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Let's not start rumors here. That's not going to happen.
Probably like 10 minutes after the podcast ends, I'm going to get a DM.
Besides, if Stieven buys it, it's sent to my house, and then I get to control where it goes.
Oh my god, this fraudulent chain. No. So sketchy. So sketchy.
It's going to me.
Don't worry, this is all a joke.
It is a joke.
Is it though?
Well, the fact that you send things to my house isn't a joke, and but everything's arrived to you so far.
Yeah. So you talked about your work prior to Rare Candy, but I kind of don't know if you said that you actually worked on a website or an app before Rare Candy. I don't think you did, right?
Both. I've worked on both. Okay. So website design MySpace layouts are kind of website design. Yeah. At the agency, I worked on a bunch of websites. Toward the end, I started working on like business software and business apps, that kind of thing. And then while I was at the fashion company, it was shopping apps, shopping websites. I worked on some like back of house tools that the company used to run like logistics and fulfillment for our warehouses, which is it's not sexy stuff, but it's very interesting because similarly, it's like it seems simple from the outside, but there's so many problems to be solved. So that was really cool. And then we also had physical retail locations with like tech in the changing rooms, and so I did some work on that kind of thing too. I don't think I've worked on any like huge websites or apps that like famous. Like I didn't work on like Snapchat or something. If anybody here has heard of the brand Fabletics, you've seen some of the stuff I've designed. It's a clothing company, but
no,
I've heard of it.
You don't know Fabletics, Stieven? That's not huge in Belgium?
No.
Come on.
Is it even international?
It is. It is international, but I do not think they do a ton of business in Belgium.
It's a small country, okay? It's very small. It's smaller than Texas. We've checked.
That's huge. Texas is a big state. It's huge. If it's smaller than Rhode Island, I'll be impressed. Rhode Island's very small.
I don't think it is.
No. What was the biggest challenge at Rare Candy for you? What did you have to tackle that almost got you down?
Yeah, so far. You never know.
Yeah. I'm sure the future holds infinite challenges. I think prioritization and sequencing continue to be tough, which are like the fancy jargon words for like what order do we build this thing in? Because it's not like a hobby project, right? It's not a passion project. It is a business. So like, it's not like we can just approach it from a perspective of what are the things that are most exciting to us personally. Like anytime you go to build something, it also needs to make sense commercially. Like it needs to support the business, because the thing that allows us to keep building stuff, that allows us to build the cool stuff, is that the business functions to a degree that we can keep like being paid to be here and keep the thing alive, basically. So there's this constant push and pull between building things that will help the business be successful and like the things that people are personally passionate about. And so like collector tools are something that I'm extremely passionate about. Social tools, so things that make it possible to engage in this hobby with other people virtually, in like new and exciting ways that aren't currently possible with the things that already exist. That's really exciting to me. Like it's exciting to me both as a person that finds socializing online fun, but also as somebody who just enjoys working on like challenging problems. Like it's hard to make hanging out with people virtually like really, really, really fun. And if you're trying to do that specifically for collecting, for like ripping packs, for like trading slab, like these are all very specific kinds of problems that no one has solved before. So I'm super, super passionate about those. But the through line between like solving those kind of problems and making money is not quite as clear. So a big part of what I find, I think, challenging day to day is that balance. Like there are things that I'm personally excited to work on. There are things that are very clearly super important for the business. And like I'm bought into the things we've built. I'm really proud of what we've done up to this point, and I'm really excited about the stuff that we're working on. But I don't know, like I think as a designer, you're always kind of an idealist. Like you're excited about the things you're passionate about. And the reality of business is that you're not always working on the things you're most excited about. So a lot of my challenges day to day are dealing with that feeling.
Yeah.
And who sets the priorities? Is that you and Chris, or is Chris just actually saying, okay, this is the list and we're going to go from the top to the bottom?
It's definitely a group effort for sure. And not just like the two of us either. I mean, like Lola, who leads the technology side of things, Lee, like decision making has to be shared among people with different areas of expertise. Like Chris is the CEO, right? At the end of the day, CEO does get to make the call. But it's one of the things that's amazing about working with Chris. And this was why I was excited to join the company in the first place. It's like his philosophy about this stuff was very clear from our first conversations. He takes the expertise of the people around him very seriously. So it can be Chris maybe representing the business one day. It can be Lee representing his like deep experience in this world another day. It can be Lola reflecting on the technical reality of the things that we have to do and what we're trying to build. It could be me thinking about the stuff that we've done so far and like what's going to make sense for us to build next, so that we're not just like creating stuff that doesn't do anything for anybody. It's a lot of conversation where everybody comes with their perspective on it and gets on the same page about what we do next. Definitely not like a dictatorship situation. It's a little bit more of a put some people who know their stuff in the room and come up with the best path forward.
Yeah. It's probably the best way, in my opinion, to run it. Could be wrong.
So. No, I've been places that don't work like this, and they're definitely worse.
Yeah, for sure.
Much worse.
Like the bigger the company gets, I'm not saying that this will happen eventually at Rare Candy, but the bigger a company gets, the more it just comes down from the top. The actual decision making.
Like when the ship is huge and unavoidably like decision makers are like higher up, it's really difficult for them to understand what things look like elsewhere. So, I mean, I've definitely experienced that working on bigger teams. It was one of the reasons that I was excited about joining a startup, is like when the team is this small, like everybody knows what's going on, and that it leads to better decision making all around, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you're not happy with the decision that's made at the end of the day, or like you might be okay with it, but it's not that, oh, I'm really passionate about this thing, working on it right now. But like just the fact that you all talk about it together, you all kind of figure it together, then that makes it a little bit easier because you feel included. You're not just like, I was told to do this and I'm always told to do something I hate to do and I'm getting sick of this. It's like, no, this is best for us right now. I'll get through it, and then hopefully we'll get on to something that's more fun.
Yeah, you have the context, which helps. Yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
What's the biggest priority right now? Can you share that?
Biggest priority. I mean, we want to see the community grow. Like, I think that's always going to be what it is. I actually don't think that priority is ever going to change. When I say the community, I mean globally. That's not like just Discord. That's not just the app. That's not just the website. Like, we want to see more folks here. More folks here means a lot of different things. Like, it's not just get more people in the door. It's we want to build a thing that more people want to be a part of in whatever aspect they're a part of it. Like, if you're somebody who has a bunch of stuff you want to sell, sure. If you're just somebody who like just likes to collect and you just want to do that with other people who also enjoy collecting, it also includes those people. Like, I think a big part of it for us is constantly thinking about how we can make sure that we are helping each part of the community get bigger, as opposed to getting like too focused on any one piece, because it's like an ecosystem, you know? Like, you need people who just love it for the hobby. You need people who care about it enough that they'll put money into it. You need people who care about it enough that they put hours into like helping run a server. You need people who care enough about it that they spend the time to learn everything about it and then create amazing content about it. And if Rare Candy is going to be as successful as certainly we all hope it's going to be, it's only going to do that if the community is really amazing. And large communities with like diverse perspectives and a bunch of different skill sets, those are the ones that are the most fun to be a part of, that tend to create the coolest stuff. So I think just community growth overall is kind of our guiding light all the time. I don't know that that's really changed at any point. Like as we move from one project to the next, there might be like a specific thing we're trying to build with the goal of making the community a little bigger, a little more engaged, help them have a little more fun, help them get access to something they didn't have access to before, that kind of thing. But yeah, just making it bigger for everybody so we can all keep doing this thing together. That is always the goal.
Yeah. Now, side note there, you're talking about community. I'm just curious, like, how many people came up to the booth at CollectCon and were like, oh yeah, I know who Rare Candy is, Because I assume there's going to be people who don't know, because there's so many things out there, right? And some people are first time at CollectCon, but, did you have a lot of people coming up that were saying, oh yeah, I've heard of Rare Candy, or maybe I'm in the Discord, or maybe I heard Lee talk about it, or anything like that?
A decent chunk. And okay. Lee was also there, so like folks who know Lee or showing up to see Lee tend to know what Rare Candy's about. Mm-hmm. I spent a good amount of this one out on the floor actually, because we were doing testing for this new tech we're working on. So I'm like out and about trying it out, seeing how it goes, talking to people on the floor about it. But yeah, a decent amount of recognition. It's a little bit up and down. I wouldn't say that this was one where I was like blown away by the number of people who recognized us, but unavoidably there are people who know what we're doing. The flip side of it is also kind of good too, though. I mean, like when you go to a con and everybody knows exactly who you are, it feels really good to be like, we've established this reputation. We're literally recognized just based off, the logo. That definitely happens. But there's also an aspect of it being an opportunity for new people to hear about us. So when you go to a show and people don't know who you are and you get to tell them who you are, and then you get to see them get excited about it, it's very cool in a different kind of way. And I'll say shout out to Len. Len Lee is one of the engineers on the team who was there with me. And just like an incredible like evangelist for what we're doing. So he's like rocking around, making friends, like meeting all kinds of cool people. And that's one of the things that I wind up enjoying, most about these cons, outside of just getting to do fun stuff around this hobby, getting to meet new people and, folks who didn't know what we were doing before, getting to tell them what we're about. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. And I got to do a lot of that at this one because I wasn't just hanging out at the booth the entire time. It was maybe one of the most fun ones I've done for that reason.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good time.
It was great. It was great, Stieven.
What was what was the general perception of the scanning feature? You obviously launched it right before CollectCon. I assume people were excited because I thought it was absolutely fantastic. So what was the general reception?
Definitely excitement. Definitely excitement about the concept. I think conceptually people are very like sold on what we're trying to do here. It is very much beta technology, which means it is not prime time ready yet. But when it works, it's like, it's amazing. And when we're demoing it out to folks and they get to see it, just like pick up a card, get all the information about it. You can see pricing if you want to. You can see like rarity of it immediately. That kind of stuff is really, it's just fun. It's just fun, right? Like it creates more, it gives you more from the experience of looking at a card than you might get without it. And that's particularly true for people who are not deep experts. Like if you're somebody who's already extremely knowledgeable about this stuff, you might already be up to speed on the majority of it. Like if you're looking for a specific card, you don't need a scanner to tell you like what the average value is, because you probably were already checking that yourself on some kind of regular basis. But it winds up being huge for people who are somewhere in the middle where like you're very much into this, you know what you want, you know enough to be like, I think I should be excited about this, but you don't know quite enough to know how excited you should be. Or you have something in your collection that you're getting back into this hobby and you're curious like what its place is in this world. Cool, this is the way you can figure it out. At the booth with Lee, we also see this is like very interesting to parents because parents are like a lot of them new to this stuff. Like you have some parents who collected as kids and are now, introducing their kids to it, and that's really wonderful. And they tend to know a good amount, but even them, like they don't know everything. And so having tools that make it easier for them to understand, like when their kid gets something cool, or if their kid is like chatting with a friend and their friend like wants to trade them something, like parents can use this to kind of protect their kid a little bit. That's maybe one of the most interesting things, is seeing like the different ways it can be applied that we weren't even necessarily intentionally trying to solve for. But no, it was a good reception. It was nice to see. There's a lot we still want to do, but
there's like a lot you could do with it, because like you're talking about the value thing. You could even have a like, oh, should we trade cards? You both scan it. You both have your apps. You're both connected as friends, and it's like, what's the value here? What is this? And so then it makes it more even, so people can see.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah, that is 100% the kind of stuff we would like to do. It's I don't know, like, the cards are physical, right? Like, one of the most fun aspects of it is the fact that at the end of you breaking a pack, whatever, like you have something, but so much of the information about it doesn't exist in real life. Like, if you want to learn more about it, you go on the internet. A lot of times we have relationships with other collectors who are not physically near us. So if you're restricted in what you can do because the technology just doesn't make it possible, you're stuck. You're just kind of out of luck. So there's a reason I'm excited about collecting tools overall, because it makes it possible for us to take all of the things that make collecting as a hobby so satisfying in person and bring that stuff into this world so that it can be just as fun, even if you're not physically around somebody. That is kind of my dream for it, is to like make collecting virtually as joyful, if possible, as it is to do with friends in real life. And this technology to me kind of feels like the start of that, because as soon as you can make the physical cards that you have feel real virtually, as soon as you can make that feeling of, this card someone has way over there feel real to you when you're in Belgium and I'm in New York, like, that's where things start to get really interesting. And the feeling of this community goes from being this like kind of fragmented thing that exists in all these different places to like one thing that we can all plug into and be a part of anytime we want. So yeah, we're on that path now. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, and it gives a level of tangibility to the app too. You're not just using the app for like buying things or the auction or anything like that. It's like, oh, this is connecting me with what I physically have, and so something that gets people using the app differently is pretty neat.
Yes, 100%.
Let's dig into the scanning feature.
Okay.
Is there any schedule, like predicted schedule, on when it will be expanded to perhaps Japanese or other languages? Is there anything in talks about that?
So we don't have dates, but as soon as possible is kind of the goal. Like, running this for English Pokemon cards is like proof of concept, right? We want to get it to a point where with just this game, just in this language, the recognition is very reliable, very consistent, and the information that we're pulling up for it is also very accurate, which like getting pricing information, for example, for cards is not simple. Like, there's all different grades, there are different grading companies, there are difference between like conditions if we're talking about ungraded cards, there are different variants of like the same card, especially in like the classic game. So there's a lot of stuff to solve there, but expanding into different languages, major priority. I would also say expanding into other trading card games, also a huge priority. So we don't have a specific timeline for them. Those are like a great example of you find out how long it's going to take as you work through the process of like collecting the information and calibrating the tool to work with that information. We're still in the process of figuring out how complex those are, but they feel really, really important to me, and they make the tool immediately so much more useful, right? So as soon as possible.
And are you working with people from PokeData on this to get some of that price tracking or anything like that? Because I know early on with Rare Candy, they were kind of working together on some things.
And that's my knowledge. I don't think so.
Okay.
And what about Pokemon sealed product? Is there any world where you could scan that for a value, like booster packs, booster boxes, whatever it may be? Or is that not something you guys are considering?
We are considering it, yeah. So if you're talking vision, totally. The goal is that you can identify the value of any of the stuff that collectors want to identify the value of. That totally includes sealed stuff too. It presents challenges on the recognition side, like being able to identify product with a camera is surprisingly complex. It's actually in some ways more complex for sealed stuff than for cards, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, it's less of a priority, I would say, at this point than card identification, but it is 100% something we would like to be able to do.
And one last thing I want to ask, if you'll allow me. This scanning feature, like I want to add my collection in the app. Is that something you guys would do? Like I have this card, I scan it, and I add it to my profile, add it to my collection within my profile on the app, so I can keep track. Like there's a bunch of apps that keep track of your collection. Is that something you guys would be doing on Rare Candy too?
It's definitely something I would like to do. To me, scanning the card is cool. But again, if we're going to unlock cool experiences around collecting, you need a way to collect, which scanning is like step one. Collecting is really that future path. So for sure.
Cool.
I'm just thinking, even with like insuring your cards, because some people who get their cards insured, you got to keep like a record of what it is. It would make things actually just easier. It's like scan. Okay, all the data's are here. You know, if you can print it off or get it in a table or something like that, that'd be cool.
Which like also just introduces so many other cool things you can do once people are like keeping track of their collections that way. I think PSA just recently launched their app, and it includes, I believe it includes estimations around like condition of a card. Another great example of really cool stuff you can do. So like once you get to the point where you can identify the card, your technology is feeling good there, you start narrowing it down to, we see the card, we can look for things that are going to impact its value, and we can start making judgments about what effect that might have if you decide to get it graded. If you're going to be trading, then maybe that's like, hey, I'm going to trade this card, and our scanning technology is able to let the other person know, here's some information about the condition of the card that you might want to know when you're considering this trade. There's so many different ways it could be useful. So I'm really excited for us to see what we can do with it. Again, this is me getting way far in the future, right? Getting so far ahead of where we are right now, but so much cool stuff you can do.
Bright future ahead for this scanning feature for sure. Something people will be really excited about. Obviously, it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of time. Like, how long did it take you from scratch to get to the point you're at for the scanning feature?
I mean, if we're talking about when ideation started, like on the design side, technically, like we've been working on this in some form or fashion since I joined the company.
Wow.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. Some of that is on the what should the experience be like side of things. Like you want to make sure the thing you're creating feels good to use, which is very simple to say, but can be very hard to get right in practice. And then there's the whole technical side too. So it's taken a good amount of time. We're getting to the place where it feels like the foundation is there in a good way, so we can build cool things more quickly. But it often feels that way. And then you bump into a new technical challenge. So I'm sure we'll be continuing to spend time on it for the rest of the time that we're here with the company.
Yeah, future is bright. Keep repeating.
Stieven wants us, to have a good community here. He wants the company to succeed. The future's bright for everything.
Yeah,
it's a very exciting moment. Like it's the last couple of years we've done so much. It's been very intense at times. This is definitely one of those moments where it feels like I'm picking my head up and looking forward and feeling that feeling of like, oh, this is getting somewhere very cool. I'm very excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
What was the biggest challenge that you had in the company?
Didn't we talk about this one? Me trying to balance.
We went over biggest.
Oops. Let's edit that out in the live podcast.
Edit and post, Noah. All right.
We got so deep into the scanning feature, okay? Cut me some slack, okay?
That's all right.
Okay. All good.
We're going to flip that. What was the biggest mistake that you made? It might not have gone out to the public, but what was the biggest mistake that you made? We all make mistakes, so this could be a funny story.
I'm trying to think if I actually have any.
Like the one time you deleted the whole server by accident. You don't have one of those.
Yeah, we all remember that day. No, I mean I'm a designer, so I'm not trusted with. I don't have delete the server access.
Yeah, it's not a red button right there. Okay.
Yeah, every now and then I press it just to see what happens.
Yeah, Andrew.
It just makes a funny sound.
Calling up.
They're smart. It just makes a funny sound. It's just for my own entertainment.
Maybe like honestly, a new update on the app that you rolled out and it just didn't work the way you thought it would work or intended it to work or it just crashed, whatever.
there have definitely been moments when we like push it, and it's not just a me thing. Unfortunately, again, when you're a designer, you're kind of insulated from a lot of those like major mess up moments because it has to go through so many people before anyone actually sees it. So I am lucky in that regard. There have definitely been times we push out a new feature and I don't have an example in mind, but you push it out and immediately red flags go up in our logs and it's like,
Yeah.
something's happening. And so the team has like, 30 minutes to an hour of, we need to figure out what this is. But that another thing that I love about working at this company, I've worked at places where that moment happens and it really is not fun to work at the company for the next 30, 60 minutes because people are so panicked and not having it. A lot of very level-headed folks at Rare Candy. I've seen some major stress moments, some very high pressure moments, and people really keep their heads on their shoulders. So I don't have any huge ones off the top of my head. And the fact that, I mean, do either one of you have any, do you remember any major moments that externally it was like, oh, something bad just happened? Have any stuck out?
I feel like the bidding in like the first auctions I've been on, I feel like that wasn't always going through, but that I'm not sure if that really is a mistake. Maybe it wasn't just optimized at that point, but I feel like the bidding feature, like at the very start, just sometimes didn't work for me, or I was too late, or it lagged, whatever it might have been, but the bid would not go through in time, and you would just be too late. I'm not sure if that was actually
that was
like
definitely something we saw during the beta period.
Yeah.
Performance. Again, performance for a live auction is hard. There was an early period, especially in like the lead up to like before we got around to the charity auction that we did in October of that year when we were in our like kind of medium open beta, right? Like we're running small like breaks and stuff like that, just with like a small group of people, where we were still fine tuning that stuff. And that was a great example of a moment where we were like, okay, we know how big we want this thing to be, and these beta auctions are comparatively small, and we're still seeing some of this stuff. So it was a good example of a moment when we went from like, we built this thing that looks nice and under good circumstances works exactly the way we want it to. And now we're starting to see that like in actual real world circumstances, it gets a little bit different. So that was definitely one of those months where we had to crunch really hard to get it to a place where it felt really reliable, which is required. Like you can't run auctions virtually if they're not reliable. So it felt really good by the time we got to the charity auction that things just worked. Shout out to beta testers like yourself for being a part of those early auctions and helping us get there, because it would be impossible without you.
For me personally in life, like anything, like generally speaking, I learn the most out of mistakes. So making mistakes are often good in a good way, I guess. From a business perspective, that's probably not the greatest of viewpoints, but for me personally, like I learn a lot from the mistakes that I've made in the past. So make mistakes.
No, it's part of it. If you're not trying stuff enough, but every now and then you get it wrong, you're probably just standing still. Which, come on, what's the point?
Yeah.
But on a serious note, like I feel like the things that are getting pushed out nowadays are just on point. I don't really see a whole lot of issues or things that aren't working or like massive things. Like obviously you will encounter some small issues here and there, but like nothing major.
Yeah,
from my point of view.
I'm incredibly proud of our engineering team. Like that is certainly my experience too. As a person responsible for what we call user experience, so keeping a track of how people feel about the stuff that we're building. It means I keep an eye on all of our feedback channels, right? So when reviews are coming in, I see it. When I see folks posting here in the Discord, like any of the feedback channels, I'm keeping an eye on that. App Store reviews, like I chat with Stuart over on the support team about the kind of stuff that he's seeing in our support email on a regular basis. And it's a sign that we've grown a lot, that we have like the right people for sure, but also that having the right people, we figured out the right kind of processes to make sure that the stuff we build is rock solid, because we've gone from finding out we're getting things wrong on a regular basis, being, a pretty regular part of the day-to-day, to a point where, we can put out cool stuff and know that it's going to be okay. And then when we keep an eye on the feedback channels, it turns out they are actually okay. So huge shout out to our engineering team. They're really excellent.
That's behind the scenes stuff, you know.
They deserve their flowers.
They do. No, that's the thing. It's like, hey, you don't know them, right? Like, I mean, people. That's what the point of the podcast. You get the inside scoop over here.
Yeah, the good stuff. Spilling the beans.
Spilling the beans about how much I love our engineers. That's really like top secret stuff.
Oh, dang. Yeah.
If you had to pick one update or feature that you build throughout the entire course, what would it be? Your best or your favorite?
I mean, as of this last weekend, it has to be the scanner, just because it's taken so long to get to the point where we have it out. I think that's probably my favorite, just because, like, when I was thinking about joining the company and chatting with Chris about stuff that we might build, that was a thing that I was like, I would love to work on that. So that one is probably the one that I'm most excited about. But it is also beta, so it's not technically released. So I'll add a second one, which is we did like a redesign of what we called the Discover page, like the homepage experience on the website and the mobile app late last year. We had to for a lot of reasons. Like it had been in kind of the state we released it in the year previous about that whole time, and we'd gone from running like a handful of auctions and having like a high quality but small-ish shop to like a rapidly growing catalog. Like there's a lot of stuff. We've got folks selling in the marketplace. It's getting difficult for people to find the things they want to get because there are so many things. And so the end of last year was a lot of us being like, how can we make it possible for people to easily sift through all the cool stuff that's available here so they can find the things that are right for them. So we completely redesigned the homepage, redesigned the shop page, built search, like all these different pieces. And it went from feeling like there was an overwhelming amount of stuff that it was kind of hard to get to what you wanted to being much, much, much easier to find stuff that you were looking for, including for those of us like on the team. Like we used the marketplace. So we were feeling the pain of wanting to get the cool stuff that people were selling and having a hard time getting to it. So it felt really cool to get that out there. And perfect timing, also got it out right ahead of the holiday season. So it wound up coming at a really good time for the business too. Very, very proud of that one. Very proud of that.
Definitely.
You guys have been here for a while. What's your favorite feature or update that you've seen?
I think I spend the most amount of time on the auction, so I love that. I mean, I love the scanning, and I love the potential for the scanning feature, obviously too. Like that could be as big as you can imagine, almost like that feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, without being on the beta, I don't get the scan feature yet over here. You know?
Oh yeah,
I heard you have.
I'm gonna have to switch to iPhone. Yeah, my 6S. That. Ooh, yeah, not very fast. That phone.
Yeah, it might destroy your battery. It might not work actually.
Yeah.
We're talking about the scanning feature for like the last 20 minutes, and Noah hasn't even touched the scanning feature.
I know. I'm like, dang, I want to try this out. I can't even like.
My God.
To be fair, I've got friends with iPhones. I'm just gonna have to say, please, download it. Let me test it out. Let me use it.
Shoot them the beta link. Try it out. Yeah, I would love to know how they like it. Well, and obviously how you like it. But I mean, please tell everybody to try it. This is how we learn. This is how we make it good.
Everybody try it. Go try it. You listening right now, go try it.
Yeah, please. Smiley, please go try it.
Yeah, I only get the basic features over here. No, I think for me though, my favorite thing is like I want to have a search feature. When I'm going and I notice that I use the most because I try to stay off the auctions because I don't want to buy things. So right now I don't want to spend money, so I stay off the auctions intentionally. Steven sends me an auction every now and then. It's like, Steven, I can't look at this. Come on, stop. But I'll go on and I'll be like, I think they have this on Rare Table. Let me look. I'm pretty sure I saw a drive about this, and I'll just like use just your filters, just straight up a simple filter. I'm looking for Japanese. I'm looking for One Piece. I'm looking for this, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, they got this. So just filters for me. That's mainly like it's a simple thing, sort of, but like it's pretty like necessary, right? It's something that a lot of sites have filters, but they don't always categorize them the same way, and so I think how that's done, that's what I like the most.
That is great to hear. They're definitely like they're a must. I mean, you can't look through stuff without filters. So I'm trying to remember when exactly we launched that, but it was a good example of a project that seems simple on its face, but it winds up having a lot of behind the scene works that needs to happen for it. I think that was another one that Andrew, other one of our engineers, Alejandro, I think they were the big two on that one. And yeah, I mean it's great because of the work they did.
And it definitely expanded because I feel on launch it was like just a couple filters, and nowadays it's a pretty good selection of filters.
It's getting bigger. Yeah, it's getting bigger. We're thinking about expanding it again. It's the fun challenge as your catalog gets larger. Is there's so many different ways you could hypothetically like split up all the stuff that's available, and depending on the person who's looking, they might go looking for different things. Like maybe you look by language, maybe you look by era, maybe you look by condition. It's like there are so many different ways it can be sliced up. So it's one that we have to think about constantly, especially as like it expands. Like early on when it was mostly just Pokemon, that makes things simple, right? It's just one game. But as soon as you start expanding to different games, you wind up with people who have very different ways of thinking about the stuff they're looking for. So it's kind of a constant one of learning more about how people are searching, adding support for it over time. So I expect to see filters keep growing in this next year.
Cool. I do want to call out Sean's favorite feature here. He's actually saying in the chat, the bookmark item is in different auctions as it sends you a 15-minute till that item is up for auction is his favorite feature.
It's a good one. Watch listing. Yeah, I mean anything time sensitive, right? I think between that and drops, it was one of like the earliest like requested features we were getting. It's people being like, you need to let me know when this stuff is happening. Yeah, which of course. So that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad. I mean, feel free to our 6 audience members. Sound off with your favorite feature, L5. We just lost one. Thanks, Shanti.
They got scared. And what are you currently working on besides probably the scanning feature is I assume something that keeps you busy, but like what other features are you currently developing? Spill the beans.
That one's going to be like my world for a bit. The rest of it is focused on making the marketplace more easier to navigate. So we've got search and filters that make it possible for you to drill down what you're looking for. But as it's gotten bigger, it's gotten harder to just browse. Like the reason people have to start using search or using filters is because it's too much. But there are good ways to present categories of product so that you can just look through things, but still have it kind of focused on the stuff that you're looking for. So making it easier to browse categories of product in a way that is fun and flexible and reflects like the different ways people look at stuff. That's kind of a big one right now. It's a good example of a feature that's not super exciting, but when your site doesn't have it, it's much harder to find cool stuff. It's much less fun to just browse around. And as soon as you do have it, people start doing a lot more just looking, as I know from working at previous companies. So look out for category landing pages sometime in the next couple of months. Woo!
You heard it here first, okay?
Yeah. It's a big reveal. Huge reveal for this audience.
See, people are excited. We got people coming in. They heard about a new feature.
And tell us the secrets. This is what it is.
Yeah. As a wrap up, give us a secret.
Secrets. Do you guys like secrets about pizza? I got pizza secrets.
Is it pizzas that are on the shop that are coming into the office?
No, it's just the best pizza in Brooklyn. Honestly, I don't think I have any good secrets. My good secret would have been the imminent release of the scanning tech, but it's out now.
Yeah.
At this point, you guys are gonna see us building the thing that I'm most excited about, and it's been something I've been having to be quiet about for a little bit, but now I don't. So. No secrets.
Okay, but you
very honest.
You had me at pizza, so I need to know about this pizza secret now.
Okay, pizza secret. The best margarita.
We talk about pizza like every weekend.
We do usually in the
happy
hour.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, the best margarita pizza in New York City is at Table 87 it's technically Gowanus in Brooklyn. It's $5.
Okay.
The slice is huge. It's so simple, but it has the best sauce I've ever had in my life, the perfect amount of cheese, a little bit of, how was it, basil, I think?
Basil,
And then it's thin
probably.
crust, but it's not too thin. It's not too thin. Like, it's so good. It's one of the best crusts I've ever had. So, Table 87, Margarita Pizza. If you're ever in Brooklyn, get a slice.
No one will remember that. This is.
I'm making notes.
Please do.
And
if you're in New York, let me know and we'll get together.
About that pizza there. I love how passionate you got about that slice of pizza there. That's the
person,
passion we want to see.
That's what
yes, passionate about pizza above all else. Yeah.
I mean, this was a great insight to what you do and what is going on behind the scenes. I loved it a lot. So thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.